Bible Verse Daily. Learn one verse every day. Isaiah chapter 40 verse 31 is one of the most beloved verses in the entire Old Testament, and for good reason. It offers the image of soaring on wings like eagles to a people who felt utterly grounded, unable to move, crushed by circumstances beyond their control. But most people who love this verse do not know the naturalistic detail that makes the eagle image so precise. There is an ancient belief reflected in early Jewish and Christian commentary that eagles go through a radical renewal process. At a certain point, an aging eagle's feathers become so heavy and worn that it can no longer fly effectively. In the renewal cycle, the eagle retreats, loses its old feathers, and grows new ones. The old wings must go before the new wings can come. The image Isaiah chose was not simply of eagles flying high and free. It was of eagles who have gone through a stripping process and come out the other side with the capacity to rise again. That is the renewal this verse is describing. Not the strength that was never tested, not the confidence that was never shaken, but the ability to rise again after a season that took everything. The verse is written for people in exactly that condition, which is why it has comforted so many for so long. Isaiah chapter 40 opens with two of the most tender words in the entire Hebrew Bible. Comfort, comfort. They are addressed to Jerusalem, and they signal a dramatic shift in tone from the first 39 chapters of Isaiah, which are largely characterized by warning, judgment, and descriptions of coming disaster. The historical context is complex. Most biblical scholars identify at least two major sections of Isaiah, with chapters 40 through 66 addressed to a community that is either anticipating or already experiencing Babylonian exile. By the time you reach Isaiah chapter 40, the catastrophe that the earlier chapters warned about has either come or is imminent. The people have lost their land, their temple, their political institutions, and their sense of national identity. They feel abandoned by God. The opening of Isaiah chapter 40 is God's direct response to that feeling. He speaks tenderly to Jerusalem. He announces that her warfare is ended and her iniquity is pardoned. He speaks of a voice crying in the wilderness, "Prepare the way of the Lord," a passage the New Testament applies to John the Baptist. But before Isaiah chapter 40 verse 31, the chapter emphasizes the incomparable greatness of God. He measures the oceans in his palm. He weighs the mountains. The nations are like a drop in a bucket. This is the God who promises renewal, which is the whole point. The Hebrew word translated as weight in Isaiah chapter 40 verse 31 is Qavah, and it carries far more active and intense meaning than the English word suggests. Qavah comes from a root that means to twist or to bind together, like strands being twisted into a rope. When you qavah toward God, you are not simply sitting passively until something changes. You are binding yourself to Him, intertwining your hope with His character and His promises. The Greek translation of the Old Testament, the Septuagint, uses the word hupomeno for qavah, which means to remain under, to endure, to hold one's position under pressure. So waiting on God in Isaiah chapter 40 verse 31 is an act of sustained, tethered expectation. It is active. The word renew in the verse is Hebrew chalaf, meaning to exchange, to put off the old and receive new in its place, exactly like the eagle exchanging worn feathers for new ones. And the three images of renewal are given in descending order, not ascending. Mounting up with wings comes first, then running, then walking. This is often misread as a progression from small to great, but scholars suggest Isaiah is making the opposite point. The most extraordinary thing is not the soaring. It is walking without fainting when the dramatic feelings are gone, and you simply keep going in ordinary faithfulness. The eagle imagery in Isaiah chapter 40 verse 31 has been interpreted across a wide range of traditions, and each reading reveals something about the reader's context and concerns. In ancient Jewish interpretation, the eagle's renewal was sometimes understood as a metaphor for Israel's national restoration after exile, the nation shedding its broken identity and rising again as a people. The Targum, an Aramaic paraphrase of the Hebrew text, expands the verse to emphasize the collective nature of this renewal, the whole community waiting on God together. In Christian interpretation, the eagle has often been applied to the individual believer, especially in periods of personal suffering or spiritual dryness. Medieval commentators connected the eagle's flight to prayer and contemplation, seeing the ascent as a metaphor for the soul rising toward God. The early church father Irenaeus connected the eagle in this passage to resurrection, seeing the exchange of old for new as a picture of the body being transformed. In Reformation-era reading, Calvin emphasized the contrast between human weakness and divine strength in the verse. The whole point, he argued, is that the renewal does not come from the human being gathering their own resources. It comes from God alone, as those who wait receive something they could not generate themselves. All of these readings share the sense that the verse is about a God-initiated transformation, not a self-achieved one. Isaiah chapter 40 verse 31 is often quoted as the verse for people who want to soar, and that is a valid reading. But what the verse may be offering most urgently is comfort for people who cannot soar right now, who are not running, who are barely walking, and who are trying to simply not collapse. The structure of the three images matters. Soaring on wings like eagles is the dramatic, elevated experience of faith. Running without weariness is sustained forward movement. But walking without fainting is the quiet, unspectacular faithfulness of someone who is simply still moving when they feel nothing, when the spiritual highs have passed, when prayer feels dry, when the circumstances have not changed. The promise of renewal is for that person too, maybe especially for that person. If you are in a season where waiting feels like all you can do, the word Qavah suggests that is not inactivity. You are binding yourself to something. You are tethered to a God who sees you and who promises that the exchange is coming. The old feathers, the exhaustion, the worn-out season are not your final condition. The verse is Isaiah's testimony to a people who had lost everything. Wait, and God will give you what you could not give yourself. Isaiah chapter 40 verse 31 is addressed to people who have been through loss and feel they cannot rise again. The Hebrew word Qavah means an active, binding expectation, not passive resignation. The eagle image speaks to a renewal that requires shedding the old before receiving the new. And the three images, soaring, running, walking, descend in drama but not in faithfulness. Sometimes the most extraordinary act is simply not fainting when you have nothing left. That is what God promises to sustain. If this verse study helped you go deeper, please like, comment, and subscribe to Bible Verse Daily for a new verse study every week. Hit the bell notification so you never miss one. New verse studies every week.